Nobody knows even why some houses are called haunted.
What would you call this place?
A deranged house isn't a bad way of putting it. Such houses are described in the Bible as leprous. Before that, in Homer's phrase for the underworld, a house of Hades.
And you really believe that this was possible? That apes were systematically taken from this planet to another and altered by selective breeding, atomic surgery, methods we can't guess, and returned with new faculties instilled in them, higher intelligence, perhaps something else.
Hello and welcome to the Paranormal UK radio show, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK radio network, which is a nice long thing to have to say right at the start of every show, but I have to, otherwise Irene will get very annoyed with me. I'm Andy, your host, and I'm joined by Kerry tonight as my co-host. Now, I should mention that this is going to be a semi-permanent setup now, as we've discovered. Irene is taking some time off from doing shows. Again, there's nothing wrong. She's not any problems. She's looking at some ideas, the things she wants to do for next year. So she wants a bit more sort of background time for a while. So for the time being, it's going to be myself, Andy Mercer, and Kerry Greenaway is going to be my co-host for the flagship show. So hopefully we'll have a good, interesting evening tonight. We're going to mention we've got a guest on this evening who's been talking about her work and life, but I'll come on to that in a moment. First, just a couple of things I want to mention. This is going to be our Halloween show. This will be going out over Halloween, or the closest show to Halloween, shall we say, because we only do once a month now. This has been the end of October. So tonight's show is going to be in two parts. The first part, we're going to be talking with our guest in a moment, which I'll let Kerry introduce in a second. The second part, which is probably a little bit shorter than the first part, is actually me reading a ghost story, or rather a supernatural horror story. I'm a huge fan of H.P. Lovecraft, and I've always fancied doing an audio narration of one of his stories. And I thought I'd give it a go with one of his earlier stories, which is, technically speaking, not part of the Cthulhu mythos, if you know Lovecraft writing. It's an earlier story than that. But it's called The Music of Eric Zann. It's a short story about some very strange music. Now, being a dark ambient music composer myself, it kind of fitted in with me a little bit. So I've even composed some music that goes in the background of the story. There's some sort of general ambient sound as well. So that'll be on at the end of this. So you'll hear me talking. It's the first time I've done it. The whole thing is about 18 minutes long. It took me over an hour to record and over 3 hours to edit. So it was quite a challenge, I must admit. But it was good fun. It's the first time I've done anything like that. And I might do some more in the future. But that's later on. For now, the first part of our evening is with a wonderful guest we have, which Kerry, I haven't even introduced you yet, Kerry. I do apologise. I'm waffling like a loony as usual. How are you, Kerry?
I'm very well, thank you. I was just letting you waffle on.
Well, you know what I'll be like. I wouldn't stop if you interrupt me. I do apologise. I just got totally carried away. I think I must remember to mention these things at the start of the show, and I got lost in myself. But yes, what have you been up to at the moment? What have you been doing?
Oh, I've been very busy on the crystal front, as regular listeners to the PA UK channel will know. I have my own crystal and mineral business called Spirit and Soul Island, and I've just launched the Academy, Spirit and Soul Island Academy, which is a new venture. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, don't leave it there. Tell us more about it. What's it going to be doing?
It's a learning zone, basically. So, like, if you want to know more about crystals, rituals, tarot, all the other sides that I do that I haven't really spoken about, I just focused on crystals and their meanings, not so much in what to do with them or how you can incorporate them into your daily life and how you can become empowered through these usages, really. So it's a learning zone. So we're going to be covering lots of different topics in regards to crystals, but we're also going to incorporate, obviously I've got the paranormal in there, and I've got the folklore and a bit of history in there as well, because I incorporate all of those facets. So it's showing a side of me that's more integrated with all the things I do and why they're integrated than it is to do with the selling side, which is the Spirit and Soul Island crystals. That's more to do with selling. This is more a learning zone where people can basically flip open my brain and pick all that knowledge that I've got stored up there in there. So it's a bit like coming out of the shadows of my own work. Because I keep things very solitary. It's a subscription site, so it's £15 a month for the information and to become part of that. So if anybody would like to get involved, then please come over onto Spirit and Soul Island Crystals and send me a message and I'll send you the details.
Where can we find you? What's the best format, platform, whatever?
It's Facebook. I just work through Facebook at this moment in time.
Excellent. So if they look for Spirits and Salt Island on Facebook, they should find you.
They should find me, or just Kerry Greenaway, either.
I might find you there as well. Okay, if you'd like to introduce our guest, because I know you guys are good friends, and I've never met our guest yet. Hopefully one of these days I will. I'm not sure if I've spoken to our guest before, but we shall find out. Anyway, Kerry, over to you.
I have got one of my very best friends in the studio with me tonight, or with us tonight, should I say. Her name is Clare Hinks. She's a psychic medium, and she is just phenomenal. One of the best readers I've ever come across. I'm going to tell you that, Andy. She's a bit scary at times. And actually, part of what I'm doing is through things that Claire has said to me when she's been talking to me and working intuitively and getting messages from the other side, as it were. And I thought she'd be the perfect guest, being as this is, like you say, the closest show to Halloween. So, Claire, welcome.
Thank you. I am sitting here with a huge grin on my face because it makes me so happy, Kerry, that you're actually doing this at last.
And I should be telling you, she's been nagging me for months and months and months about doing this. And I'm like, no, it's time. It just felt like the right time. And so I took it on board and I've launched it. So thank you to you on that one. So Claire, you have your own membership, don't you? You have the Perfect Community and the Dragonfly Lounge.
Well, I do, but we started as the Perfect membership, and then I decided to change the name. So it's actually it is just the Dragonfly Lounge, but it is perfect.
It is perfect. Yeah, because you have me in it.
Yeah, and I do call on you a lot, don't I? Into my Dragonfly Lounge.
The thing is, we talk so easily, don't we, about different concepts. We come from very different perspectives on things, and it's great to bounce off of each other, which we used to do on a podcast called the Spirit Dimension, didn't we?
We did. Gosh, that seems a long time ago, doesn't it? Now I think that was pre-COVID, wasn't it? It was a good one.
It was
a good long time ago.
So Claire, can you tell me, how did you first start being able to talk to spirit, basically?
Oh, this question. I used to really worry about this question. And now I'm just like, oh, well, in those days. So long story. Here we go. Or maybe I should read the story, the bedtime story. I started hearing spirit when I was about 14, and it did come as a bit of a surprise. There was no pre-warning with it. It just the lights went on and it just happened one day. I used to go to bed at night, and it was the quiet in my day. So when I went to bed, all of a sudden the quiet came about, except for spirit. They saw my light on and they would start to chat. So for me it was like being in a busy pub, being in a busy room with lots of people. Couldn't see anyone, but could just hear all the chat. So it was like lots of people talking, but not being able to hear one person in particular. And that's how it started. So then I learned how to control it. So my mum was always into tarot reading. She used to go and see mediums and psychics and things. And she contacted somebody who said, right, this is what she needs to do. And so that's what I did. And I learned to control it. So I could turn it off effectively when I went to bed. So at least I was able to sleep.
Yeah.
And then after that, it kind of just became a bit of a party trick, really. The first reading that I gave was to my mum from my dad. So my dad passed away when I was 2, and consequently I don't remember very much. I mean, I certainly don't remember anything about their relationship. And I had my own tiny little pieces of memory of him, but he showed up one day. It's a bit cliche, at the end of my bed. He just did show up at the end of my bed, and I remember saying to my mum, oh, my dad's here. And I was able to give her validation about things that had happened in the year leading up to his passing and time before that. And so that was the first reading that I ever gave anybody, which was really lovely for all of us, for all 3 of us, I think. and the rest is history, I guess. It's been an ongoing journey.
Now, you work platform mediumship quite often, don't you?
I do.
And you've done this on your own, but you've also worked with a psychic artist on stage.
Oh, yes, I have. That's more recent.
That's a lot more recent. Let me take you back to your first ever platform mediumship, when you first ever got up in front of all that sea of people. How does that work? Is it like a light bulb goes above their head and that's how you know that's who it's for? How does that work for you?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that donkey's years ago, somebody told me I'd be working the platform, and I was like, having none of it. I said, I will not. No, definitely not. I'm definitely never doing that, you know. And obviously Spirit have a plan. And I ended up, I said to Spirit, I said to my guides, okay, when we came to that point, I will do this, but I will do it at my pace. So I never kind of jumped in at the deep end. I built my groups up gradually. So I would do like I started with 2 or 3 people, and then it went to 5 or 6 people, and then it got to 10, and then it got to 20. And, you know, it was a gradual build up. And the first, gosh, you're asking me a question. I'm trying to think when the first one was that I did. Probably the very first one, in front of a proper audience, was probably at the Paracon in 2015, Sage Paracon. And there was probably about 40 people in that room that day, and I was really, really nervous, but it is a little bit like a light bulb going on above somebody. But for me, I kind of just look around the room and I land on people. So I'm looking around the room, and then I just go, oh, it's you. It's just I see where I've got to go. It's not, I don't actually see a light bulb above their head, but I just feel a feeling, and I just know it's you. So, when I started, actually, I wasn't that specific. I'd feel like, oh, I'm in that area. So I was between 2 or 3 people. So I would have to work at it a little bit to figure out which one of them I was with. But as I've gone on, like these days now, I can just go, oh, it's you. Come on down. It's you.
So nowadays, it's not like a light bulb that goes above their head, that you just scan the room and you sort of you land on somebody, is where we were at.
Yeah, I do. I just land on a person, and then Spirit do their thing. You know, they just connect, they start connecting, and I just will pass on, you know, their validation. And for me, it's about validation, guidance, nice message. You know, and I always say, Spirit give you what you need, not what you think you need.
This is very true. Trust the process is all I'm saying on that one. Have you ever had to give somebody some bad news?
No.
Is it always positive that comes through?
It's yes, because the way that I work is that I'm not, so this is going to sound, you know, Kerry, you know me, so you know that I work in the unicorns and rainbows zone. I'm on a fluffy cloud with my unicorn and, you know, my angels. But I work in the light. So my guides, my job as a light worker is to bring positivity and love to the people that need it. So my focus when giving somebody a message is to bring forward what their loved ones need them to have, right? So it doesn't feel like I've never felt like I needed to give somebody bad news as such.
Do you not get it, any bad information, and don't pass it on, or you just not get any at all?
No, I just don't get any.
Oh, okay.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Who wants bad news, right?
No one does. No, you're right. No one wants bad news, but you know, there are bad news, I'm sure.
But, you know, I'm aware that there are, you know, psychics and mediums out there that do deliver bad news, but I also feel that you have to be incredibly responsible with your words when you're doing this work, because the people that come to me, or you know, or whoever, the people that you see generally are in a vulnerable place, you know, so you do have to be responsible for what you say to people. You can't just blurt out, well, you know, Uncle John says you might have cancer. You can't say that to somebody.
No, that's true. Yeah.
You know, but I don't receive a message like that anyway. That's not the format that they would give it to me.
Okay. So you mentioned your guides.
Yes.
And I know one of your guides.
Ooh.
Her name
On a
was
personal
Lola.
level?
She was a showgirl. She'll kill me for saying that. Tell me about Lola, because she's a bit bad. Is it not bad? As in, I want to say badass. I'm going to say it. She's a badass. Tell me about Lola.
So funny because Lola is just not what I would ever expected. So I have a team, and my team has come together over the last probably 5 years gradually. It wasn't like I had like a team of guides all in one go. They've all just come gradually built up depending on where I'm working, how I'm working, you know, what's going down today kind of thing. But Lola showed up when I was in a doing some particularly, I'm going to call it, well, maybe it was a bit dark work. Don't ask me to elaborate because I can't. But Lola rocked up because she was my support. She is kick-ass. She is a bit badass, but she's very, I don't know if would you call her dominating? I don't know if that's the right word. But
she's very sure of herself is how I would put it.
She literally rocks up in black leathers, which is totally out of character for me. You know, they say that you should trust what you see. You really need to trust what you see. You know, your guide is never going to necessarily be what you anticipate them to be at all.
I totally agree.
I've got a whole load of different people. They all look different. They're all different ages, you know, they all give me different support. But Lola, some of the work that I do is become a little bit more ritually, a little bit more kind of so we should say eviction.
We'll go with eviction.
Pardon?
We'll go with eviction.
And Lola kind of supports me with that, and she doesn't stand for any nonsense, so I find that incredibly helpful in some of the situations I find myself in.
What do you mean by eviction?
Getting rid of.
Yeah, so just like moving like negative energy on, negative spirits on, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Which, to be honest, I find myself, it amazes me that I'm even find myself doing that, because I never thought that I would. So, you know, it's just another point really, is that you just need to trust where the journey takes you, because I've learned a long time ago, if you commit to spirit, they commit to you. And they absolutely do. And the more I trust more and more every single day.
Right. Trust more and more every single day is where we got to. It started again.
Balls.
Is any of the kids? Are they? Oh yeah. Is it one of your guides?
Were you able to download it onto your phone?
Yeah. I'm just logging in to my phone. Hang on.
Yeah,
are the kids on the internet? Is anybody else on the internet?
No, they're not.
Okay, try it on your phone.
I mean, you're in Cornwall. It's like old-fashioned territory, steam driven, isn't it?
It is a little bit. I loved that though. I loved being in and out.
Right, I'm going to join the call on my phone a minute, and then
beautiful.
I'll mute it on the laptop. Hang on. Hello.
Oh,
we've got an echo.
Hang on. There we go. It's gone.
Okay.
Is that better?
That's
shitloads better.
Yeah, that's good.
Right. Let me just put my earphones in and see if that's okay. Although, actually, I probably won't be able to. No, I'll leave it on there. That'd be fine. Leave it like this then.
You sure?
Yep, I'm good.
Right. So we got to the point where you said you trust them more and more.
Yeah, so I've learned to trust. When you commit to spirit, they commit to you. So I'm just, you know, that's what I do now. I'm going with the flow.
You certainly are. Now, when we went to a grotto, didn't we? Oh, grotto. It wasn't really a grotto, was it? It was what was it? St. Nectan's Glen. That's right, it's a Glen.
St. Nectan's Glen.
because I went to Cornwall recently, Andy, and I went to see Claire. She made me very welcome, and I'm moving there, and I'm leaving everything here behind, and I'm just becoming her sister, basically.
We should probably tell the story of how how you got here, like not the train journey, obviously, but the story of us. Maybe we should do that. Maybe that's a whole other show. The story of us.
No,
The story of us.
Hear the story. I like to hear the story.
Oh, well, no, basically, we've been, years and years and years we've been talking, never actually met in face to face. And then, obviously, I said, right, I'm coming. And she was like, what? And I was like, I'm actually going to come. And she was like, oh, my God. Because if you don't know anything about me, it's like I do have massive anxiety regarding travel and social anxiety. So for me, this was a big deal. And I took my courage in my hands and I did it. And I went down to see Claire.
Oh, you did do it. And it was like one of those movie moments at the train station, wasn't it?
It was so funny. I come out the train station, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm now in Plymouth. I haven't got a clue where I am or what I'm doing. Where are you, Claire? You're not here. Where are you? Kind of moment. And I just see her running down the pathway, like towards me. So I literally left all my luggage and went running towards her. Proper terms of endearment moment, right? And we were squealing and jumping up and down and going, oh my God, proper chav moment. Everybody's staring at us as if to say, like, what the hell is going on?
Oh, wow.
But it was so funny. It was so funny. But we didn't care, did we? Because we were in the moment.
We just went for it. And it was just, like that, one of those moments where, yes, we have connected through the internet. And there was always that risk that I would drive her crazy. You know what I mean? Or I wouldn't be comfortable, or there's that worry, isn't there, Claire? You know what I mean? Because we don't really know each other apart from talking on the internet. But it was just incredible. It
was a connection that has always been there, hasn't it? It was so bizarre. It was
such an affirmation of that connection. The family as well.
My son said to me, I said, Kerry's coming to stay, and they were like, who? I said, Kerry Greenway's coming to stay. And they all were like, oh, okay. What Kerry, from on the internet, like on Facebook, Kerry? Because they all, obviously we just chat. Like I carry Kerry around my kitchen, chat to her while I'm tea and stuff. And they're all like, hi, Kerry.
And I'm like, hi.
Yeah. But my son said to me, well, do you even, she's coming here to see? So I was like, yeah, it's so cool, isn't it? And he was like, what if she murders us all? I was like, all right, let's not blow this out of proportion. I know we've never met her in the flesh, but I'm pretty sure she doesn't carry a carving knife.
I'm so going to turn up with a carving knife next time, I swear to God, just to freak him out. Now he knows my humour a little bit.
But we had a bit of a time while you were here, didn't we? We went to some lovely places, and we did tick some of your bucket list off.
Massively, like a proper tour of Cornwall. It was brilliant. Anyway, we went to St Nectern's Glen, which is this beautiful glen. It's like a mini valley with a brook that runs down it, but it's really spiritual. And the reason I bring Lola into it is because when we was in the waterfall area, which has been totally embraced by the unicorn and fairy kind of people, because there's like little statues, and people have left offerings everywhere, and it's very, you can tell it's very spiritual to people, isn't it?
Yeah, people go there and perform rituals. I've recently actually had a lady called Michelle Marie Elliott who is practicing witch locally to Cornwall, locally to me, and they go there regularly at solstice and various different times to do their offerings and have their do their witchy thing as well. There's people that go there for all sorts of rituals and reasons, but it's a beautiful place, isn't it? Absolutely beautiful.
It is stunning,
and the water just flows through this hole in the rock, and it's gorgeous.
It's just amazing. So anyway, we get there, so I was like, oh, we're gonna have to do a little ritual, obviously, as you do. And then Lola comes in, which is why I bring Lola into the room, and she goes, what are you doing all that for? You don't need any of that crap.
I forgot forgotten that.
Had you?
You did.
That resonated with me. I was like, I don't like Lola.
We don't need to do that.
And she
Oh,
was like, we don't need
all
to
right
do
then.
that. Why are you doing that? And I was like, because I like doing it all like this. It makes me feel better. It was hilarious.
So Claire heard her
It's-
say that, and you repeated it back to Kerry. Then.
Yeah, we found it hilarious.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And Kerry's doing this lovely little ritual in the water, like by the water, and Lola said, you don't need to do that. I was like, shh, yes, we do.
And I was like, shut up, Lola. I'm quite happy doing my little
Yeah.
thing, thanks. Like,
Yeah.
it was hilarious. Yeah, but I found that
It's
funny.
because she's very, because that's our the light and fluffy part of us, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
Because you do your fair share of dark work and things
Mm-hmm.
and rituals, and you've done your hardcore stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't really done much of that. So I kind of think, and I actually, Kerry, turned to you quite heavily when I first became aware of Lola, didn't I? Do you remember?
Yeah, very much so, because it can be
and she
hard
rocked-
to take.
Yeah.
But Claire, it goes in a triangle, you see, because when I've had stuff to do, I go to Andy.
Yeah.
I was going to wonder.
Interesting.
I was wondering what she knows about me.
I know, right? So it goes. We've got like a lovely little filtering down. So Andy's like the master occultist.
The lower depths of hell.
He's down in hell with Satan.
You could be handy to know.
He is very handy to know, I tell you. And then what I've garnered over the years from my lovely Andy Mercer, I've taken on, and now I'm filtering it through to you and to other people.
Achieve a certain balance there, then, Kerry. Really, with that's on either side of you, as it were.
I know, it's great. I love it. I get the best of both worlds. It's amazing. And I want to talk about Frank as well, your other guide, Frank, because he's very fundamental in your Dragonfly Lounge, isn't he?
Oh, Frank is, and Frank is quite recent too, really. I mean, I wasn't aware of Frank until after I started the Dragonfly Lounge, which was quite early on in our first lockdown, obviously with COVID. And Frank, I started running circles and doing development group during as part of the Dragonfly Lounge, and one day I just became aware of this man beside me, and he told me, I'm going to help you with the teaching. My job's to teach. So, you're stuck with me, kind of thing. And I was like, oh, okay, this is new. And Frank has actually become a massive part of my teaching. Like, I don't like to say, oh, I teach, but that's what he says. We teach. We're teaching the people. We're teaching them. We're helping them to grow. We're helping them to become more in touch with their own spiritual side. We're helping them to tune in. And do you know what I've learned so much? I open my mouth at these things and stuff comes out and I'm like, whoa. Really? That's what Frank says. So I run sorry.
I was going to say, oh, excuse
Go
me,
on.
don't mean that noise. What do you know about him? What's his background? Where is he from? What was he?
I know nothing about him.
Oh, okay.
I've actually never asked, to be honest.
Ah.
But the thing about Frank, the thing that makes him different is that he makes his presence felt with whoever I'm working with. So I was just going to say, when I run a group called Dragonflies, and it's a group that I run each week with people locally. And there's about 8 or 9 of us in that group now. And when we open the circle, it's Frank that opens it. So obviously everything that comes out of my mouth I just channel it. I just open my mouth and it comes out. We open the circle and Frank takes the circle. So he will go into the middle. I feel him. I tell them Frank is entering our circle and he's going to show himself to you one way or another. And he will tell me how he's going to do that. So he might say, I'm going to put my hand on their head, or he'll show me his hand on their head, or he'll show me his hand on their shoulder. But he will show himself to each person in their mind's eye in the way that they understand. Every single person that has done that or taken part in that has described Frank in the same way.
How have they described him?
So they describe him often with a hat or a long dark coat. Like I always see him like a 1930s style doctor, you know, like a long coat, dark trousers, dark shoes. And that's how he shows himself to me. And I don't describe him to anybody, but they will all say, oh, I see that he's got a hat, or he looks like an older man, or he's wearing dark trousers, or I saw his shiny shoes, or, you know, things like that. They'll all say the same.
Find that fascinating, that idea that there's a level of connectivity that's going on when you're working like this, that people are seeing something.
Yeah.
That's always very interesting.
But what's amazing for me is that I've never worked like that before. So when we started Dragonflies again, we only started it this September, so we've just done like 7 weeks. The way that I used to run it is nothing like the way that Frank runs it, and it's on a different level completely, and it's just friggin' awesome, frankly. It's amazing. It's amazing.
So I want to talk now about going back to the platform work that you've done recently, working with a psychic artist. Can you explain, first of all, the psychic artistry side? How does that work?
So obviously I only know this from what Sandy has told me. So she has a spirit guide called Leo that connects with her, obviously. And when she sits down to work, Leo takes over. So she will pick up the pencil, basically go off into her own little world, sleep, however she goes. Sometimes she closes her eyes and sometimes she doesn't, but I always say, right, back in the room, you know, wakey, because she literally looks like she's gone off to sleep. And then Leo takes over and he draws. How this works is amazing, but how he draws the person that I'm, you know, delivering the message from, and it's quite incredible to watch.
So while you're doing your job up on there, giving the messages from spirit, she is channeling into the same spirit and drawing that person, and that's done on a projector, so the person in the audience can see what she's drawing.
Yes, so we have so they put a big projector screen up, and she sits down at a table, and obviously the audience can see everything that she's drawing. And in the meantime, I'm saying, oh, right, I'm just doing my thing. I just go, all right, I'm going to go to that person over there in the way that we talked about earlier, the light bulb, going there. And then I will I deliver my message, and I'll be watching on and off what Sandy's drawing on the screen. Very often she'll put an initial, or she might, Leo and I have quite a bit of banter. So if I get something wrong, or if I say, what do you mean by that, then he'll put a smiley face, or or if I miss something, he'll tap the paper, like proper tap it with his pencil. It's just really entertaining. I have no idea how even, it still baffles me, to be honest, because the first time we worked together, I just thought, I was a bit nervous because I thought, how am I going to know who she's drawing, but actually it doesn't affect anything that I do. Somehow it blends, and it's just amazing.
The feedback you've had on these particular events has been absolutely astounding, hasn't it?
It really has. I'm so surprised, because I just don't, I just do my thing. You know me, I just do my thing. But people love it. They just, and it's such lovely validation. It's one thing, isn't it, to have a message from your granddad or your dad or whatever, but to actually get their picture and have it given to you is just a whole other thing. It's a whole other ballgame. It's a whole other validation, isn't it?
Oh, totally. Completely out the ballpark kind of validation, because you're seeing the person that you're saying is speaking to them, and it's like, God, that is my nan, or that is my granddad.
And we've had experiences where Sandy's drawn what looks like one person, but it's actually two people, or the same person but at different times. So she always says, it starts with the eyes. So the eyes, no matter where you are in your life, your eyes stay the same. So your eyes never change. So she always actually starts her pictures by drawing the eyes. Leo always draws the eyes first. And then sometimes, so she drew a picture for me a while ago, actually, and she said to me, it's
it's two people in that picture. So when you actually cover one half of it, it looks like one person, and when you cover the other half, it looks like a different person.
I have seen this picture,
Yeah.
and I can verify this information that Claire's saying.
Yeah,
It is actually quite freaky.
it is freaky.
And it is actually really kind of amazing that's happened. Just out of curiosity, does she actually look at the person in the audience?
No.
She does. She
I've
sits to
never
the side,
seen
doesn't
her.
she?
Yeah, she sits to the side, and very often she's got her eyes closed. So, you know, and she's not really in a position to even know who I'm talking to, because the audience, I mean, so far we've done 2 events together so far. And the first event I think we had about 60 people, and the last one we had about 70. So she can't see who I'm talking to or where I'm going. But what was interesting is the first event that we did together, in the interval, she came and said to me, there's a woman in spirit with a baby. She's looking after the baby. And I said, okay. And she said, I feel like that, you know, that might happen. So I was like, okay, that's fine. Obviously, she didn't point anybody out in the audience to me. When we went back in the second after the, you know, into the second half, I went to a woman at the back and I said straight away, and actually, this was a conversation that we just had over the course of the interval, Sandy and I. And when we started again, I went to this lady at the back. There was no hesitation. I went straight to her and I said, there's a baby in spirit. I just could see it. I just straight away could see the baby, and I wanted to talk, and I gave her loads of stuff about the baby. Sandy had only drawn eyes, and I saw that she'd drawn the eyes, and I said, she's drawing that baby. And she did. She carried on. She drew the baby, and behind the baby, she drew the grandmother that also came through.
Wow.
And everyone was going, oh my God. And it was so nice. It was so lovely, because that baby's being looked after by Granny or whoever it was. And, you know, for the people that had that, it was really nice.
So I have a question about that. So if you had a baby that passed, for example, do they grow up in spirit?
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I mean, as an example, I had a lady here a long time ago who lost a baby to cot death. And the first time she came, the baby, I could see the child, and I was able to tell her about all of it. She had all of her validation, and she was able to leave here knowing that the baby was okay, it had crossed over safely, that it was okay. The second time she came, I saw the baby as an older child. He was about 7 or 10, I think. The third time she came, he was in his 20s, and he was actually showed himself to me the age that he should have been. And the reason for that was, if I'd said, oh, there's a child here, and there's a boy here and he's in his 20s, the first time, she wouldn't have known who that was. She wouldn't have been able to connect with him. She wouldn't have identified. Whereas she knew straight away she had a baby that was there. So that's why. So, and obviously there's no time, is there, that spirit side? You know, they can be what they want to be. If we die when we're 95 and we were happiest when we're 20, we'll be 20.
Yeah.
What a bloody lovely way to go.
I'm going to be clubbing it. I'm going to be back to my clubbing days, I can tell you now.
Yeah.
So what happens, right? So when does spirit come back, like reincarnate? What happens under those circumstances? Does that happen?
As far as I'm aware, this is a choice that we have. So if your soul or your spirit has learned everything it needs to learn, then potentially no, we won't reincarnate. But if there's still more to learn, then yes, we will. I'm still figuring all that out, to be honest. It blows my mind a little bit, because I quite often think, well, what about my dad? Like, where's he? Because I don't see him very often. Maybe he's reincarnated and come back as someone else. But then all of a sudden he'll just show up one day, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's still there then. But then I think, well, and I know this because he told me this a long time ago, my dad. He disappeared for months. He was there loads and loads at the beginning, like when I was about 15, 16, he was there lots. And then all of a sudden he just disappeared. And my mum said to me one day, where's your dad? Like, have you seen your dad? And I was like, well, no, he hasn't been here for a long time. And then one day he just turned up. And I was like, where have you been? You haven't been here for months, you know. Hello. And he said he'd been doing he'd been given another job, so he'd been seeing children cross over. So
Right.
he went away. He wasn't available to me because he was busy helping children cross over.
I
So
see.
I think that we all are given different jobs, potentially, if you like, if you want to call it that. Yes, we reincarnate, 150,000% we reincarnate. But when we do and how often, I think that's a personal choice. I think it's a personal soul choice.
Right.
So I don't think that's something that I could tell you from what I know.
So if you reincarnate, have you had a spirit of a person that's lived, or a spirit of a person that's reincarnated?
So that again, have I
had a spirit come through where the person's alive?
Oh, well, that's weird, actually, that you say that. Once that happened. So I did a reading for a lady who I know really well, and it was her father. And so and she was disconnected with her father, so she didn't actually know if he was dead or not. She didn't know if he'd passed over or not. And I gave her all of this information about her dad, and she took it and she totally accepted it as her dad. And then she found out a couple of years later that he was alive. So you tell me. I don't know. And now they speak weekly, and she's going to visit him for the first time in 40 years.
Wow.
Is it possible that a spirit might come through or basically lie, claim to be someone they're not? Do you ever experience that?
I do believe that, actually, but I haven't, sort of off the top of my head, I can't recall a time that's happened to me, but I do believe that can happen.
I was just wondering, maybe that's what was going on there. Perhaps the person was fibbing. It wasn't really a father at all.
Maybe, or maybe it was a grandfather more so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like an ancestral link bringing the information forward.
I was walking through the park one day, and there was a friend of mine walking in front of me, and we stopped and had a chat, and I said, I just need to tell you, I can see an old lady walking along behind you. Described her nan to a T, and she said, but she hasn't passed yet, but she's nearly gone. So I was like, oh, okay. And she literally passed within 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she was really nearly gone. So that was, I think that we move across, we start to move. And then, it's for some of us, it's quite gradual, isn't it? It can be quite a gradual transition.
Yeah, the physical takes a while to catch up with what's happening spiritually.
Yeah.
That's how I see it. And I've seen that play out a few times.
Yes, I think it's a common report of someone seeing a person who, in a ghost form, if you like, that is close or has just a moment passed, and literally like what they call the crisis apparition, when the person actually has died, or is just about to, very, very close to it, and they appear to somebody who's another part of the world. That's quite a common, probably one of the most common forms of sort of ghostly encounters anyone really has. Speaking of ghosts, as we are sort of in Halloween mode, do you do like ghost investigations, paranormal investigations, that sort of thing at all, Claire?
Oh, it's funny you should ask.
That's my very next question, Andy. Carry on.
See?
That's so in tune.
All one party here.
So I do. I've done a few. I have been to some interesting places. I went to Drakelow Tunnels with a lovely MJ. I've also been to Bodmin Jail and Jamaica Inn, which is just up the road from me. And I'm actually running my own first paranormal investigation in November.
Excellent. Where are you going?
To a local pub, actually. It's called the Elliot Arms in a place called Tregadillet, which actually, Kerry, you've been to. We went there and had a very scrumptious meal, didn't we, while you were here?
Did. Yummy.
Yeah. And funnily enough, that was the evening that I kind of went, right, I'm just going to talk to them about this. And the rest, is all planned now. So I'm excited about that.
So
the funny thing is, on that day, we did Bodmin Jail, Jamaica Inn, and then we went to the Elliot Arms, didn't we? We did all three in one day.
We did. Yeah, we did. We had a good day.
We had a very good day.
So what do you do on this event? Do you pick up stuff from the location or the people that's with you, or how does it work? How does it work?
So yes, I do. I do pick up things from the location. I have to say, I I always think of myself as like I'm not pro at paranormal investigations, and then I go somewhere and I'm like, oh my god, this has happened or that's happened. I pick up quite a bit from locations. Not generally. I try not to focus on the people that are there.
Yeah.
I try
Yeah.
to focus on the place where I am, because
That's
you know,
it.
actually for me, that it's a nice break, because I
Yeah.
spend a lot of time every day, you know, connecting with the person, you know, with the person in front of me. So it's nice to go somewhere and actually do a paranormal investigation, because it's, you know, it's just a little bit more exciting in a way. It's different variation.
I don't know if Kerry's told you, but I used to do that myself. Sort of mediumship work, but purely on locations. I just call
Oh, did
myself a
you?
locations medium, pick up stuff at the place
Ooh.
at the time. And yeah, I mean, I've worked with a couple of different companies doing that, and they often used to say, if you pick up on the people around you, don't say anything because they're not here for that. And I said, well, I don't get it anyway. I just see the places as they used to look. That's what I used to get. And I always find that really quite fascinating. Just literally seeing the place as it used to appear maybe centuries ago. Just close my eyes. My eyes open, I could just see it and would describe what I was seeing, which I always found was good fun. But I've never picked up on people or families ever. It's just not in my purview, repertoire, whatever you want to call it.
Interestingly, actually, for me, I can shift it. So I can, like now, I'm either in the room or I'm connecting to spirit. So I can choose. I can just be like, right, okay, hang on, I'm just doing. It's like I can be 5 minutes before somebody comes for a reading. I can be doing my hoovering or the ironing or making tea. They walk through the door and sit down, and I'm in the zone.
Yeah.
If I go to a location, I'm either in the location or I'm focusing on the people. I don't, you know, I feel very lucky in that respect, because I can kind of, I don't know, pick and choose a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
I can just shift my awareness really into wherever I want to be focused.
Well, I must admit, as again Kerry knows this, I have completely shut down for years. I don't get anything anywhere anymore. Most of the time, occasionally it sneaks in, but most of the time I get nothing when I go to places anymore. And that was very much a deliberate choice. I
okay. Why was that then? Can I ask?
You can ask. Certainly, to be honest with you, I got a bit fed up with it. I really did. It was I stopped working with the ghost investigation groups, the larger groups, as part of sort of the medium for the group, if you like. It's a bit of a longer story, and it was a lot to do with the people I was working with. I didn't like the ethos of some of them were working with, and decided to drop out of the whole business completely for quite a few years, and sort of just. It's kind of how I met Kerry, really got back involved a little bit. But again, it was just being part of a group, sort of investigating locations and just picking things up. And it just wasn't there anymore. Just, you know, I can now do it a little bit if I want to. If I go somewhere particular, I can still get a vibe and the like. And sometimes you go to a place like on holiday or whatever and start picking a few bits up, just images and feelings and vibes of the place. But yeah, I don't know, just sort of, I describe a bit like at first it's like having the TV on in the background and not really listening to it, and eventually you don't even notice it's there. It's like if you work in a shop and there's music playing in the background. After a while you just tune the music out completely, you don't even notice it anymore. And that's kind of what I did. It was a semi-deliberate, shall we say, because I wanted to move away from it because of what was happening. We're now talking actually about 20 years ago when I think about it. It's quite amazing. Time has flown by. But yeah, I was moving into different kind of professional work as well, so I wanted to sort of create a bit of distance from it for professional reasons, what I was doing at the time, what I now do as a psychotherapist. But I am finishing this work fairly soon. I'm actually moving on to doing something different. So I might get back more involved again. I don't know. I've been thinking about it as a possibility. I might do.
It's coming down your way, Claire.
As an occult.
Yeah, well, you'd be very welcome. Yeah. Well, maybe we should do an investigation. Maybe us three should do an investigation.
Oh yes, definitely.
God, that sounds like a plan. Because then you're down to Glastonbury.
Well, not quite. I'm moving to Somerset, but not far from Glastonbury. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Somerset. Whereabouts in Somerset you go?
I don't want to say where it is yet because it's only a small
okay.
too easy to find. But yeah, it's not far from Glastonbury.
Somerset's lovely though. Somerset's lovely.
Absolutely love it there. I've been there more times than I can remember. It would have been Glastonbury itself about 10 years ago, but the place, it's not what it used to be. I have to say, it's got a bit downhill. It's a bit rough and noisy these days, and I want more peace and quiet as I go to some time.
More peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Yes.
I might have to move to the West Country myself down that way. Everyone's moving there. They're my soul family.
Crack on then.
I've been looking.
Have you?
I have. I can't afford it.
Oh.
I can afford a barn. Oh, that's why I've decided I can just about afford a barn, and I can't afford to convert the barn, so I would be
Goodness.
with horses and cows and stuff. So
Nothing wrong with horses. Nothing wrong.
nothing wrong with horses, but the kids aren't too happy about that thought. Is all I'm going to say on that one.
Sharing a barn with the horse.
So I want to take you to Bodmin Jail because we visited there when I came down.
Yes, we did.
Bodmin Jail is, it's tourist now, right? It's a tourist trap, everybody. It's fantastic for a tourist trap. Lost a lot of its original charm, hasn't it?
I think so. I do think so. I mean, I went there when it was in its original state, and by original I mean it didn't have any hotel rooms, and it wasn't a tourist attraction in the way that it is now. You know, I went in there after it had been renovated and didn't even know where I was because they've changed it so much inside. You go in a different door, and I was like, where am I? And it just, I think sadly it's kind of lost a little bit of its charm. However, having done a couple of events or investigations there since it's been renovated, I had probably one of the most intense experiences that I've ever had. So there's still plenty of energy. There's still plenty to pick up on.
There certainly is.
What happened?
I was going to say, tell us about that.
I've never done trance. I've never really had the opportunity, I guess. I've never really gone down that road, and I had a bit of a night there. I got kind of taken over by a big male figure in the, where were we? In naval quarters, I think, of the prison. And it was a really strange, surreal experience. And it didn't just happen once, it happened twice. And I felt really, afterwards, I felt really violated. Like, I just wanted to come home and shower and wash it off. It was a really strange feeling.
Yeah.
But this man just completely, it wasn't, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like nasty. It wasn't a nasty, it just felt like somebody had been, like, I just felt really grubby. My energy felt really grubby. But there is without saying too much, in case you want to go there and investigate, there is a heavy male presence in that particular area. And he has been known to do that before. And I'm just like, I go in there and I'm like, come on then. Bring it on. Which probably is a bit naughty of me, to be fair. But I take Lola with me, and I know I'm protected, so I know that it's fine. I'm going to be fine. And I just felt myself nod off almost. And then I feel like, I don't know if you've ever done trance. Either of you have done trance? It feels a bit like
a semi-trance. If you remember, Kerry, at the place in Kent, were you there? I don't think you were there.
Yeah, we went to the Guildhall in Sandwich, didn't we?
Get really caught up in what I'm experiencing. What I do, not dissimilar to what you say there. Sometimes I repeat back what I'm hearing, and sometimes you really feel you're repeating something. You're almost like you're automatically saying it. You're not actually thinking of saying these words. They just sort of come out. I'm always aware of what I'm doing, what's going on, but you do feel it's. It always sounds bad to say. It's a bit like you're acting. You start acting the role of the person that's communicating to you, if you like, the information that's coming through. For me, it's always more historic replay stuff rather than direct communication. As far as I can tell, it's usually just me repeating what I've heard and what's being said. Although I think on that particular occasion, it was communicating directly to Paul, if I remember right. I think it was saying something. Yeah. So that was a bit on the stranger side, certainly, because that's not the sort of thing I normally do at all. I haven't done anything like that for decades, as I say, really haven't. So. But yeah, it is an odd experience. So for me, I felt it happening, but it wasn't like it did lose consciousness or not aware. As I know some trance mediums say they don't know what's going on, they're completely gone. That wasn't my experience.
No, mine was similar to that. So I didn't completely, I could still hear what was going on around me, but it was like I lost the use of all my limbs. And I felt like I needed to speak. When I opened my mouth to speak, it was as though someone else was trying to speak. It wasn't me.
Yeah. Step literally right close into your energy field. And he's very good at having a separation, although he can trance to a degree. He doesn't allow them to get right overlaid, if that makes sense. So they'll step close enough for it to affect him in that way. Whereas this guy, for you, overlaid.
Yeah.
You.
It was literally like he stepped into me. It was stepped in completely.
Yeah. That's how it used to be. I can remember that sort of odd feeling. Yeah.
And it did become, I think MJ literally picked me up and took me out because I wasn't coming back from it.
No.
And I did feel like I was going deeper and deeper into it. And I felt like the next day I was a bit like, oh my God, what actually happened? What happened?
Did you feel bruised?
I just felt dirty. I just felt like, I can't explain it any other way. I cleansed. I've never cleansed myself so much. I had the sage out. I had the bath salts. I was, bathing myself in the light, you name it, because I just felt like I needed to wash it off me. But we were there filming In Search of the Paranormal with MJ. And so they got the whole thing on film. So if you actually go onto YouTube, you can watch it.
Ooh,
You can watch the experience. And we did an interview afterwards because I wanted to explain how I felt about it, because I'd never done that before, and I felt like it must have come across like, what a con. And it really truly wasn't at all. It really took me by surprise, and I'd never done anything like that before. So it was really bizarre. It was a really bizarre experience.
I've had a similar experience, and I can totally get why you're saying how you felt violated.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, what was the name of that YouTube channel, in case you want to look for it?
It's In Search of the Paranormal.
Okay.
We went to Drake Low Tunnels as well, and did some investigating there.
That's
in the same series.
One of the few places I've never got to, I wanted to get to, but now you can't. Apparently, it's all closed off.
It's a wine cellar now, apparently.
Oh.
So if we did get in there, that could get very messy.
It could get very messy.
All I'm going to say
Different
on that
kind of spirits, as they say. They'll joke.
Exactly. We'll be mixing spirits with spirits, which
they
say you
shouldn't
shouldn't
do that.
They say you shouldn't do that. Well, I have done that before.
Yeah, well, that's a whole, like you said earlier, that's a whole other show. That's pajamas. That's the pajama show.
That's the pajama show. Yeah, the Paranormal in Pajama show. I love it. So, where do we go from here? So, I want to give a shout out to where people can find you. Where can people find you if they want to do the Dragonfly Lounge, or they want to see you in action, as it were?
Oh, well, the Dragonfly Lounge is my subscription membership on Facebook. That's where we are at the moment. You can join the lounge through my website, which is clarehinksmedium.com. And you can also find all my events and anything that I'm doing on the website as well. What else? Facebook, Instagram. I'm just Clare Hinks Medium in most places. Really. I also do mentoring as well, so one-to-one mentoring. So if you want to, learn a little bit more or make a bit of a deeper connection, I've been doing a lot of work with people about with inner child stuff actually lately as well. That seems to be feeling a bit current. So, mentoring isn't just about tuning in on a deeper level. It's often about decluttering yourself as well. So it can kind of go in any direction, which is really interesting and really helpful. People are loving that. So yeah, one-to-ones. You can get all of the info on the website, which is clarehinksmedium.com.
That's fantastic. So what are your future plans going forward? Are you going to just carry on doing what you're doing? Are we getting a book out here? What are we doing with you, love?
Oh my goodness. Well, there is I'd love to write a book, and I do have ideas for a book, but I haven't felt the push. So I'm kind of I'm just doing my little bit quietly in the background. I'm obviously, the Dragonfly Lounge is my baby, so I'm growing that. And it's just a beautiful space. It's instant support on your spiritual journey, because in the lounge there's new self-development each month, so there's no pressure. You can drop in there and do what you can do when you want to. We do regular development, we do regular Zoom rooms. We've had the likes of Patrick Gamble and Philip Permert and Kerry Greenaway in the group in the Zoom room. Amazing names in lights. um, it's awesome. It's an awesome place to be, and you're with like-minded people, so it's a lovely place to grow. And it's £29 a month, so it's not massive. And it's a good commitment to yourself and to spirit, really. So that's and it's a fun place to be. So I've got that going on. I'm doing more events with Sandy. We've got some more local events coming up. And the next one is on the 12th of November in Launceston Town Hall. And then we'll be planning for next year. So look out, really, just for anything coming up for next year. And I've got my own retreat. I'm running my own retreat this weekend. So
You are.
I am. I'm super excited about that.
What can people expect on the retreat? I know that it's a bit late to book, but I'm sure you'll do future retreats. So what was your idea behind the retreat? Why did you feel the need to do one of those?
I'm a person that is spirit led. So as soon as I feel the push or the you need to do that in my head, I just crack on. And I just had that one day. I happened to be at a place. My son was having singing lessons at this particular place, and it's a holiday lets, and it's in the middle of the Cornish countryside with a sea view. It's beautiful, and we were going there every week, and I was sitting there for an hour looking at this beautiful place, and I just thought, I just got this inspiration one day. You need to do a retreat. You're doing a retreat. Okay, the voice in my head says we do it, so we're doing it. So I just asked, and so the retreat is the importance of you. That's the theme, and it's basically a weekend of relaxation and luxury for these lovely people that have booked. We're doing setting intentions, releasing. We're going to do quite a bit of inner child work. We're having a beautiful dinner on the Saturday night just to bring everybody together. It's a celebration of us. And then the following day, we've got meditation. We've acquired some very beautiful crystals from a very wonderful person that I know who isn't very far away.
I don't know who the hell that would
Spirit
be.
and
That would be
Soul
me,
Island.
everybody.
So they're all getting one of these beautiful hearts in their goodie bag. So we're gonna meditate with those and get them all connected. And for me, I want them to arrive feeling like they need to relax, and I want them to go away feeling like they've released what they needed to and set intentions to move forward into the next part of the year, because this is where we are, the autumn, going into the last quarter of the year, or the last little bit of the year. So I want them to go away feeling like they've had a lovely time with lots of laughter, lots of relaxation, but also that they've done some spiritual work as well. So that's hopefully how it will work, how it will be. That's my plan.
Yeah, it will be.
So, and then there'll be more next year, I'm sure. So I'm just kind of putting the feelers out now to kind of what's happening for next year. I need to buy a diary, a 23 diary, because otherwise I'm going to have no idea.
I've already started for next year, I know, right?
Crazy.
So how many people do you have on a retreat?
So I've got, so there's 10 of us all together.
Oh, excellent. So
it's nice and intimate.
Yeah.
And it'll be a nice weekend. But we're very close to the sea. We're right in the middle of the countryside as well. So it's really, there's hot tubs in all the accommodation. So it's really lovely. Really nice time to relax, reconnect. And refresh, I think.
I mean, obviously you don't give too much away because it's probably part of what you're doing, but what do you do with inner child work? So you may have heard me say I'm a psychotherapist, and I do a lot of that sort of work psychotherapeutically as well. And it's often the core behind people's problems and issues are things that start in early childhood. So without giving it all away, obviously, what do you do?
All the secrets. So as I said before, I'm spirit led, and I've never really thought, oh, I need to do that. I kind of just find myself spiritually led down that road, with a person. But within a child, it's, as you say, it's often there's a visualization that I do quite often with people that takes you back to when you were a certain age, that you can just feel what everybody else's worries, feelings, emotions are, and we put, they get put on us from an early age people don't mean to necessarily put their worries or their whatevers on you, but they just do, you know. And we very often hold on to those things, and you know, they don't come up often until later in life, and then we find ourselves not being able to move forward in a certain area, or not having the self-confidence that we want, or not being able to rise to that challenge. And then you start questioning, well, why can't I do that? And if you start to do a little bit of inner child work, you might suddenly realize, actually, oh my god, you know, my dad was the least confident person I know, and he always told me I couldn't do it. You can't do that, you can't do that, you know. And then you start to realize, oh well, that's not what I believe, that's what they believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you shift that perspective, amazing things start to happen.
Definitely. You should be doing my job from the sounds of it.
I doubt that.
That's part of what I do for definite. Yes, recognizing you're carrying somebody else's negativity.
Yeah, it's
Use
interesting.
terminology. Don't carry it, put it down, give it back to them. Get them to visualize giving it back to the person who gave it to them in the first place.
Yeah.
You might have given it in loving kindness and care, but you don't need it anymore. So have this back.
It's profound when you start realizing. It's like, oh my goodness. I ran a course in lockdown. It was a 6-week course, and it was like we met every single day for 6 weeks on this course, and something that we touched on was this inner child, and I'd never really done anything like that before. And we did a visualization, which was the one I just talked about, and everybody that was there, bearing in mind there was probably about 10 people on this course, they probably over half of them came out of that visualization crying, because they had a realization, and they were like, I had no idea that I felt like that about that. I just didn't even know that was there, you know. And I was like, whoa, this is huge, what we're doing here. It's really huge. And I've done I do mentoring, one-to-one mentoring with people, and that stuff is coming up more and more. So I know that people are meant to be working on it, because spirit are leading me that way, you know. And it comes up for individual people. It's not something that I say, oh, I think we need to be working on that. We have a discussion at the beginning, and then whatever comes up. But very often they need to do some work. It's a decluttering. People need to declutter themselves in order to get, you know, more spiritually aligned.
Yeah, stop carrying around the rubbish that you don't need.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, I love this. This is like a melding of minds between the two of you, the psychotherapist and the spiritual worker. And it's like you're doing the same kind of job, but in totally different ways. Yeah. And one's spirit-led and one's academic-led. And it's just great, because it's just fantastic. I love it.
Wow, I'm so happy to be part of it. Thank you.
I mean, in all honesty, I've had a few people come to me in the past that have been on like retreats, and it's opened the door and they want to take it further. And so obviously what I do in psychotherapeutic is probably, no offense meant at all, but it's probably a lot deeper and goes on a lot further. But it's courses like yours that open that door up, and some people have a miraculous recovery very quickly, because they've actually begun to realize they can free themselves, and all this stuff just falls away from them, which is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I mean, we're in similar fields. Might be other ends of the scale, but we're in the same sort of field, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting how they overlap. Actually, it's the spirit and the science. It's overlapping more and more. It's quite exciting.
Definitely. I used to check out a chap called Carl Jungian psychotherapy. He encompassed a lot of these, what you might call more spiritual ideas, in his psychotherapeutic practice and work, because it responded. We respond at that level, and it's part that's often forgotten about when you're more, shall we say, scientifically based or more material based. If you ignore the sort of spiritual side of people, you're robbing them of something that needs to be there. That's why religion still exists, even though we can say some of it's nonsense. It's still part of us. It's the want of something that's a little bit more than just the physical world, because we know full well there's more to this than just the physical world. So it plays a very important part, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
I have to be so careful, don't go off on one. Get off and do it, Eric, and tell you.
Okay.
I'll start talking.
Okay, shut up, Andy. That's enough of that. You can tell I'm very good friends with both of them, which is how I get away with talking to them like that. They don't take offence.
We'll overlook it for now.
They'll slap me in the background. Don't worry, everybody. so, so Claire, when we talk about Halloween, let's bring Halloween into the picture now. We talk about the veil thinning.
Yep.
Do you get more crowded with people, like as in spirit coming forward at this time of year, or is it sort of a steady pace throughout the year for you? Do you notice a difference around Halloween or times of years?
I notice a bit of a difference probably from now until mid-December. So in other words, it gets really busy. People, it's like something happens and everyone goes, right, I need a reading. And then after Christmas, it tends to lull a little bit, usually. And then it picks up again like February, mid-February.
Okay.
So I'm taking that as time off. But I think...
Yeah, carry on.
I was just going to say, I think that I do definitely, obviously believe the veil is thinning. I do, and, spirit around us all the time anyway. So they're just going to take the opportunity to get as close as possible whenever they can. Your loved ones will, So if they see that there's an opportunity to connect with you through me, if that be through me or another medium, or just that they can come and just get your prickles up, even if that's what it is, then they will. They'll take that opportunity.
Now, lastly, I want to talk to you about signs. Spirit will send you signs. And you once told me the flamingo tale. Tell me about that.
The flamingo. Well, that's my sign for, I'm manifesting good stuff.
Yeah.
So manifesting good stuff. The flamingo for me is a sign that the universe is listening. I used to follow a lady called Sarah Prout, still do, Sarah Prout. And when I was in a place in my life where I needed to kind of go, right, I need to change things here. I need to kind of manifest this lovely good stuff into my life. I want to move house and I want to have freedom and earn loads of money and, all the usual things. There was a game that she suggested, and it was to visualize a certain thing, ask the universe, right, you've got 24 hours to give me whatever. And anyway, I chose pink flamingo. I chose the pink flamingo, and I thought, right, I like the sound of a pink flamingo. It just represented something lovely for me. So I put it out there to the universe. And the trick when you're manifesting is to put it out there and forget about it. Don't obsess about it, because if you obsess, you kill it. So you have to go, right, thank you, universe. This is my thing. This is my intention. And then leave it alone. Forget about it.
Yep.
Which I did, to a degree. And then I got through the first 24 hours. I think it was a 48-hour thing. Got through the first 24 hours and realised, oh, I haven't seen my flamingo. And then I got into the next day and was like, oh, and we literally came down to the last 2 or 3 hours. And I was like, oh, I was feeling a bit despondent. Well, never mind. Maybe I wasn't meant to see the flamingo. Maybe it'll show up another day. Maybe it won't be today. Maybe it'll be another day. And I picked up, how the Lidl's book comes through your letterbox. The Lidl's book came through my letterbox, and I sat down and I was just randomly flicking through the book, and I turned the page, and in the middle of this page was a picture of an inflatable flamingo, and I was like, oh my god, I totally gave it up, and there it was. I totally said, oh well, I'm not going to get it, and then it showed up. So for me, the flamingo is always a sign that the universe is listening, because actually since I started doing that, I'm really trusting in it. Lots of great things have happened in my life. I'm stepped right into my soul's journey, and I should have been doing it 20 years ago, and I didn't, for fear of, not being able to support myself or my family, or not being able to contribute, or what, lots of reasons. Confidence. And now I trust. Now I'm doing it, and if I can do it, anyone can. So I say, look for your flamingo.
You do. And the universe does listen, because
It
I've been
totally
doing
does.
this is a little exercise I've been playing with recently.
Yeah.
And just because, so, sometimes like no matter how much you're on a spiritual pathway, in whatever way you practice, you kind of need that confirmation that you're not just talking woo-woo and unicorns and fairies, that it is there, that it does work. So now and again, when I'm in need, it's also that practice of letting go of the outcome.
Mm.
And that's the hardest thing to do, particularly when you want something so badly. So it's quite good practice to get into, to do something like Sarah Prout's game. It's that confirmation that you need, but it gives you that practice of letting go on a lesser important scale, if that makes sense.
It's all, in a way, it almost takes the pressure off because it becomes a bit of a fun test.
Yeah.
Right then, universe, this is what I want.
Yep.
Give me an ice lolly. Like, I want a bunch of flowers. They say, thank you for the flowers. Thank you for the flowers. I've done that before, and and somebody has turned up on my doorstep with flowers randomly, just randomly. Here you go. I just thought I was coming for a reading, so I just thought I'd bring you some flowers. Thanks. Oh my God. Thank you so much. Be grateful as well. That's the other thing, is when things show up for you, just be so grateful. Say thank you.
And this becomes the law of resonance, everybody.
Yes.
I have a question for you, which I've asked other mediums before, and I always find it interesting how you would answer this question if someone says it to you. If they say to you, what are the lottery numbers for next week, what would you say?
I'd say if I knew what they were, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing. Is you're given the information that is needed, not what you want.
Yeah.
You don't want the numbers, but
Spirit give you what you need, not what you want. They give you what you need, not what you think you need.
Yeah, I mean, as I often say, I think it's more guidance and direction of where you're going. You can help with that, rather than specifics like you with the lottery numbers for next week.
I mean, actually, when you think about it, if you could predict the lottery numbers, would that fix your life?
It wouldn't.
Damn nice though.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. You'd be able to. But how many lottery winners have you seen that have fallen on really bad times? They've been inundated by people that need help, and they're the helping kind, so they gave it all away in the end, or they went crazy because they didn't know how to handle it and ended up destitute again.
One of the things they've changed with all that is that you do now get that. They didn't used to. You now get wealth management assistants. You get people who are in the banking world to give you advice of what you should do. It used to be, there's your money and off you go. When it first started, that's something they've actually introduced because of that very reason, where people have found that it's ruined their lives, which sounds bizarre to say, but yeah, it can certainly have that impact.
So it may not be a positive thing for them to give you the lottery numbers.
Exactly.
So this is the thing, isn't it? Be careful what you wish for. It may come true.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm banging him out tonight. I know, everybody.
Oh, you are.
So, Claire, in the world, we all talk about one place that feels like home that you'd never been to before. And then when you've gone, or when you've ended up at that place, and it's felt like this is where I belong, even if it's not something you expected. Have you ever experienced that?
Oh, that's a really good question.
Out.
So there's a place I have felt that actually recently. I've been to a few places where I felt like really at home. One of them is New York. I always feel really pulled there. That's got a whole other story attached to it, but we went there. My husband took me there for my 30th birthday. From the moment we booked the flight, I just felt like I was going home. I just felt like, oh my God, that's great, I'm going home. And when we got off the plane, I wasn't a bit worried. I just felt like I knew where I was going. I just loved it there, and I just felt right at home. I didn't want to come home. And the other place that I felt that more recently is Totnes, which is just up the road from us, about an hour and a half, maybe less than that, an hour up the road. We walked through Totnes, and I don't know what it is about that place, but I just said, gosh, I just feel like I need to be here. This feels like home. So I just think maybe it's because maybe I was there before, or maybe it's just because there's a really good vibe there. Yeah, I really liked it. But New York's the one for me. I just felt like I didn't want to leave. Really, I only came home for my children.
I'd also
home,
agree
really.
about Totnes as well. Totnes is a very nice town. I've been there a couple of times too.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
Totnes.
Yeah, it's a lovely town. It is a very spiritual place though, Totnes. It is. There's a vibe. There's definitely a vibe.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a connection, certainly.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us, Claire. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been
Yeah.
lovely and really enjoyable.
It's been great fun for me too. I can sit back and just quietly listen to you guys. It's been great.
And I'd just like to thank you once again for having me come and stay, and I'm definitely doing it in the new year.
Awesome. Oh, well, I'm gonna have to come to you, aren't I?
Oh yeah, you come this way so I can meet you as well, because I don't live very far from Kerry at all, so I'd like to meet you too.
Like
See,
I
I've
say,
got
honestly, there is nothing like, it's not like Cornwall. I keep trying to put her off because
but you
my
see,
area is not like it.
You did the whole traveling across London did the train thing. See, for me, that is like a fish out of water thing. Completely. You need to red flag where I need to go.
Yeah, but when you get here, it's just not like,
Well,
just
there's
really
some
not.
interesting places related to witchcraft we can always go and visit, of course, be sort of vibes you got in those places, you see.
Oh yeah,
There
we
is
could do
stuff, yeah.
that. Yeah,
Don't
we could
forget
do that, I
yeah.
suppose.
I've just written an article for a witchcraft lexicon that's going to be published next year, all about Essex witchcraft. So I've been brushing up on all of that. So yeah, there's a few places we could visit, definitely.
Right. Thank you once again to the lovely Clare Hinks for joining us tonight on the show. We will be back in a month's time with another fantastic show for you. So it's good night from me, and it's good night from Andy. Say good night, Andy.
Yes, good night, Andy. However, don't go anywhere. Here is The Music of Eric Zann by H.P. Lovecraft. I have examined many maps of the city with the greatest care, yet I've never again found the Rudin seal. These maps are not mere modern maps alone, for I know names have changed. I have, on the contrary, delved deep into the antiquities of the place, and have personally explored every region of whatever name which could possibly answer to the street I knew as Rue de Seal. But despite all that I have done, it remains an humiliating fact that I cannot find the house, the street, or even the locality where, during the last months of my impoverished life as a student of metaphysics at the university, I heard the music of Eric Zann. That my memory is broken, I do not wonder, for my health, physical and mental, were gravely disturbed throughout the period of my residence at the Rue Seal, and I recall that I took the name of a few acquaintances there. But I cannot find that place again, which is both singular and perplexing, for it was within half an hour's walk of the university, and was distinguished by the peculiarities which should hardly be forgotten by anyone who'd been there. Yet I never met a person who had seen the Rue de Seal. The Rue de Seal lay across a dark river bordered by precipitous black-briar windowed warehouses, and spanned by a ponderous bridge of dark stone. It was always shadowy along that river, as if smoke of the neighbouring factories shut out the sun perpetually. The river was also odious with an evil stench which I've never smelt elsewhere, which may someday help me to find it, since I should recognise them at once. Beyond the bridge were narrow cobbled streets with rails, and then came the ascent, at first gradual, but increasingly steep as the Rue de Seal was reached. I've never seen another street as narrow and as steep as the Rue de Seal. It was almost a cliff, close to all vehicles, consisting in several places of flights of steps, ending at the top a lofty ivied wall. Its paving was irregular, sometimes stone slabs, sometimes cobblestones, sometimes bare earth, with struggled greenish-grey vegetation. The houses were tall, peaked roof, incredibly old, and crazily leaning backwards and forwards and sideways. Occasionally an opposite pair would lean forward, almost meeting across the street like an arch, and certainly they kept most of the light from the ground below. There were a few overhead bridges from house to house across the street. The inhabitants of the street impressed me particularly. At first I thought it was because they were all silent and reticent, but later decided it was because they were all very old. I do not know how I came to live in such a street, But I was not myself when I moved there. I had been living in many poor places, always evicted for the want of money, until at last I came across the tottering house at Rue de Sale, kept by the paralytic Blando. It was the third house on the top of the street, and by far the tallest of them all. My room was on the 5th floor, only inhabited room there, since the house was almost empty. On the night I arrived, I heard the strange music from the peat garret overhead, and the next day I asked old Blando about it. He told me it was an old German viola player, a strange dumb man who signed his name Eric Zann, and who played evenings in a cheap theatre orchestra, adding that Zann's desire to play it in the night after his return to the theatre was the reason he had chosen his lofty and isolated garret room, whose single gabled window was the only point on the street where one could look over the terminating wall at the cavity and the panorama beyond. Thereafter I heard Zann every night, and although he kept me awake, I was haunted by the weirdness of his music. Knowing little of the art myself, yet I was certain that none of his harmonies had any relation to music I'd ever heard before, and concluded that he was a composer of highly original genius. The longer I listened, the more I was fascinated, until after a week I resolved to make the old man's acquaintance. One night, as I was returning from work, I intercepted Zann in the hallway and told him that I would like to know him and be with him when he played. He was a small, lean, bent person, with shabby clothes, blue eyes, a grotesque satyr-like face, and nearly a bald head. At my first words he seemed both angered and frightened. My obvious friendliness, however, finally melted him, and he grudgingly motioned for me to follow him in the dark, creaking, rickety attic stairs. His room was one of only two in the steeply pitched garret, was on the west side towards the high wall that formed the upper end of the street. Its size was very great, and it seemed greater because of its extraordinary bareness and neglect. Of furniture there was only a narrow iron bedstead, a dingy washstand, a small table, a large bookcase, and an iron music rack, and 3 old-fashioned chairs. Sheets of music were piled in disorder about the floor. The walls were bare boards, and probably never seen plaster. Whilst the abundance of dust and cobwebs made the place seem more deserted than inhabited, evidently Eric Zann's world of beauty lay in some far cosmos of the imagination. Motioning me to sit down, the dumb man closed the door, turned a large bolt, and lighted a candle to augment the one he'd brought with him. He now removed his viol from its moth-eaten covering, seated himself in the least uncomfortable of the chairs. He did not employ the music rack, but offered no choice, and playing from memory enchanted me for over an hour with strains I'd never heard before, strains which must have been of his own devising. To describe the exact nature is impossible for one unversed in music. They were a kind of fugue, with recurrent passages almost captivating quality, but to me were of notable for the absence of any weird notes I had overheard from my room below on the other occasions. Those haunting notes I had remembered, and often hummed or whistled inaccurately to myself. So when the player at length laid down his bow, I asked him if he would render some of them. As I began my request, the wrinkled star's face lost the bored placidity that it had possessed during my playing, and seemed to shew some curious mixture of anger and fright, which I had noticed when I first accosted the old man. For a moment I was inclined to use persuasion, regarding rather lightly the whims of senility, and even tried to awaken my host's weirder mood by whistling a few strains to which I had listened to the night before. But I did not pursue this course for more than a moment. When the dumb musician recognised the whistled air, his face grew suddenly distorted with an expression wholly beyond analysis, and his long, cold, bony right hand reached out to stop my mouth and silence the crude imitation. As he did this, he further demonstrated his eccentricity by casting a startled glance towards the lone curtained window, as if fearful of some intruder, a glance doubly absurd since the garret stood high and inaccessible above all the adjacent roofs, this window being the only point in the street, as the concierge had told me, from which one could see over the wall at the summit. The old man's glance brought Brando's comment to my mind, and with a certain capriciousness I felt a wish to look out over the wide dazzling panorama of the moonlit roofs and the city that lies beyond the hilltop, which of all the dwellers of the Rue de Sille only this crabbed musician could see. I moved towards the window and would have drawn aside the nondescript curtains, when a frightened rage even greater than before the dumb lodger was upon me, this time motioning his head towards the window as he nervously strove to drag me hither with both hands. Now thoroughly disgusted at my host, I ordered him to release me and told him I would go at once. His clutch relaxed, and as he saw my disgust and offence, his own anger seemed to subside. He tightened his relaxing grip, but this time in a friendly manner, forcing me into the chair. Then, with an appearance of wistfulness, crossing to the littered table, where he wrote many words with a pencil in the laboured French of a foreigner. The note which he finally handed me was an appeal for tolerance and forgiveness. Zann said that he was old, lonely, and afflicted by strange fears and nervous disorders connected with his music and other things. He had enjoyed my listening to his music and wished I would come again and not mind his eccentricities. But he could not play for another his weird harmonies, and could not bear hearing them from another, nor could he bear having anything in this room touched by another. He did not know until our hallway conversation that I could overhear his playing in the room, and now asked me if I would arrange with Blando to take a lower room where I could not hear him in the night. He would, he wrote, defray the difference in rent. I sat deciphering the execrable French. I felt more lenient towards the old man. He was a victim of physical and nervous suffering, as was I, and my metaphysical studies had taught me kindness. In the silence there came a slight sound from the window. The shutter must have rattled in the night wind, and, for some reason, I startled almost as violently as did Eric Zann. So when I'd finished reading, I shook my host by the hand and departed as a friend. The next day, Blando gave me a more expensive room on the 3rd floor, between the apartments of an aged moneylender and the room of a respected upholsterer. There was no one on the 4th floor. It was not long before I found that Zann's eagerness for my company was not as great as it had seemed while he was persuading me to move down from the 5th story. He did not ask me to call on him, and when I did, he appeared uneasy and played listlessly. This was always at night. In the day he slept and would admit no one. My liking for him did not grow, although the attic room and the weird music seemed to hold a fascination for me. I had a curious desire to look out from that window, over the wall and down the unseen slopes of the glistening roofs and spires, which must lie outspread there. Once I went up to the garret during the theatre hours when Zann was away, but the door was locked. What I did succeed in doing was to overhear the nocturnal playing of the dumb old man. At first I would tiptoe up to the 5th floor. Then I grew bold enough to climb to the least creaking staircase to the peaked garret. There in the narrow hall outside the bolted door of the covered keyhole, I often heard sounds which filled me with an indefinable dread, a dread of vague wonder and brooding mystery. It was not the sounds that were hideous, for they were not, but they held vibrations suggesting nothing on this globe of earth. At certain intervals they seemed a symphonic quality which I could hardly conceive as the producer of one player. Certainly Eric Zann was a genius of wild power. As the weeks passed, his playing grew wilder, whilst the old musician acquired an increasing haggardness and furtiveness, pitiful to behold. He now refused to meet me at any time, and shunned me whenever we met on the stairs. One night, as I was listening at the door, I heard the shrieking viol swell into a chaotic babble of sound, a pandemonium which would have led me to doubt my own shaking sanity had there not come from behind the barrelled portal a piteous proof that the horror was real. The awful inarticulate cry which only a mute can utter, and which rises only in moments for the most terrible fear and anguish. I knocked repeatedly at the door, but received no response. Afterwards I waited in the black hallway, shivering with cold and fear, till I heard the poor musician's feeble efforts to rise from the floor by the aid of the chair. Believing him to be just conscious after a fainting fit, I renewed my rapping, at the same time calling out his name reassuringly. I heard Zann stumble to the window and close both shutter and sash, then stumble to the door, which he falteringly unfastened to admit me. This time his delight at having me present was real, for his distorted face gleamed with relief while clutching at my coat as a child clutches at his mother's skirts. Shaking pathetically, the old man forced me into a chair whilst he sank into another, beside which viol and bow lay carelessly on the floor. He sat for some time inactive, nodding oddly, but having the paradoxical suggestion of intense and frightened listening. Subsequently he seemed to be satisfied, and crossing to a chair by the table wrote a brief note and handed it to me. I returned to the table, where he began to write rapidly and incessantly. The note implored me in the name of mercy and for the sake of my own curiosity to wait while he prepared a full account in German of all the marvels and terrors which beset him. I waited, and the dumb man's pencil flew. It was perhaps an hour later, while I still waited, and while the old man's feverishly written sheets still continued to pile up, that I saw Zann start from his hint of a horrible shock. Unmistakably he was looking at the curtained window and listening shudderingly. Then I half fancied I heard a sound myself, though it was not a horrible sound, but rather it was an exquisitely low and indefinitely distant musical note, suggesting a play in one of the neighbouring houses, or some abode beyond the lofty wall over which I can never able to look. Upon Zann the effect was terrible. He dropped his pencil suddenly as he rose, seized his viol, and commenced to rend the night with the wildest playing I had ever heard from his bow, save when listening at the barrelled door. It would be useless to describe the playing of Eric Zann on this dreadful night. It was more horrible than anything I had ever overheard, because I could now see the expression on his face, and could realise this time the motive of stark fear. He was trying to make a noise, to ward off something or drown something out. What? I could not imagine, awesome though I felt it must be. The playing grew fantastically delirious and hysterical, yet kept the last qualities of supreme genius which I knew the strange old man possessed. I recognised the air. It was a wild Hungarian dance, popular in the theatres, and I reflected for a moment that it was the first time I'd ever heard Zann play work by another composer. Louder and louder, wilder and wilder, mounted the shrieking and whining of that desperate viol. The player was drooping with an uncanny perspiration which twisted like a monkey, always looking frantically at the curtained window. In his frenzied strains I could almost see shadowy satyrs and bacchanals dancing and whirling insanely through the seething abysses of cloud and smoke and lightning. And then I thought I heard a shriller, steadier note that was not from the viol, a calm, deliberate, purposeful, mocking note from far away in the west. At this juncture the shutter began to rattle in a howling night wind which sprung up outside as if in answer to the mad playing within. Zann's screaming viol now outdid itself, emitting sounds that I never thought a viol could emit. The shutter rattled more loudly, unfastening, and commenced slamming against the window. Then the glass broke, shiveringly under the persistent impacts, and a chill wind rushed in, making the candles sputter and rattling the sheets of paper on the table as Zann began to write out his horrible secret. I looked at Zann and saw that he was past conscious observation. His blue eyes were bulging, glassy and sightless, and the frantic playing had become a blind, mechanical, unrecognisable orgy that no pain could even suggest. A sudden gust, stronger than the others, caught up the manuscript and it bore it towards the window. I followed the flying sheets in desperation, but they were gone before I reached the demolished panes. And then I remembered my old wish to gaze out from this window, the only window in the Rue de Sille from which one might see the slopes beyond the wall and the city outspread beneath. It was very dark, but the city lights always seemed blurred, and I expected to see them there amidst the rain and wind. Yet, when I looked from the highest of all gable windows, looked while the candles sputtered and the insane viol howled in the night wind, I saw no city spread below, no friendly lights emitting from remembered streets, only the blackness of space, unimagined space alive with motion and music, and having no semblance of anything on earth. And as I stood there looking out in terror, the wind blew out the candles in that ancient peat garret, leaving me in a savage, impenetrable darkness, with chaos and pandemonium before me, and the demon madness of that night-baying viol behind me. I staggered back in the dark without the means of striking a light, crashing against the table, overturning a chair, and finally groping my way to the place where the blackness screamed within the shocking music. To save myself and Eric Zann, I could at least try whatever the powers opposed to me. Once I thought some chill thing brushed me, and I screamed, but my scream could not be heard above the hideous viol. Suddenly out of the blackness the madly sewing bow struck me, and I knew I was close to the player. I felt ahead, touched the back of Zann's chair, and then found and shook his shoulder in an effort to bring him to his senses. He did not respond, and the viol shrieked on without slackening. I moved my hands to his head, whose mechanical nodding I was able to stop, and shouted in his ear that we must both flee from the unknown things of the night. But he neither answered nor abated in the frenzy of his unutterable music, while all through the garret strange currents of wind seemed to dance in the darkness and babble. When my hand touched his ear I shuddered, though I knew not why. I knew not why I felt his still face, ice-cold, stiffened, unbreathing face, whose glassy eyes bulged uselessly in the void. And then, by some miracle, I finding the door and the large wooden bolt, I plunged wildly away from that glassy-eyed thing in the dark, and from the ghoulish howling of that accursed viol, whose fury increased as I plunged, leaping, floating, flying down those endless stairs, through the dark house, racing mindlessly out into the narrow, steep, ancient streets and steps of tottering houses, clattering down the steps and over cobbles to the lower streets and the putrid canyon-walled river, panting across the great dark bridge to the broader, healthier streets and boulevards we knew. All these terrible impressions that linger with me,
and I recall there was no wind and the moon was out and all the lights of the city twinkled. Despite my most careful searches and investigations, I have never since been able to find the Rue de Sale. But I'm not wholly sorry, either for this or for the loss in undreamable abysses of the closely written sheets which alone could have explained the music of Eric Zann.
Nobody knows even why some houses are called haunted.
What would you call this place?
A deranged house isn't a bad way of putting it. Such houses are described in the Bible as leprous. Before that, in Homer's phrase for the underworld, a house of Hades.
And you really believe that this was possible? That apes were systematically taken from this planet to another and altered by selective breeding, atomic surgery, methods we can't guess, and returned with new faculties instilled in them by intelligence, perhaps something else.